Welcome to TVAI, where facts meet clarity, and every headline is unpacked with depth. Today, we're diving into one of the most consequential legal battles unfolding in American politics. A lawsuit that pits 12 U.S. states against former President Donald Trump over his sweeping tariff policies. Beyond the courtroom drama, this case raises critical questions about executive power, economic fallout, and the balance between federal authority and state rights. Stay with us as we break down the legal arguments, economic stakes, and international reverberations, because understanding policy means understanding its real-world impact. The legal showdown between former U.S. President Donald Trump and a coalition of 12 U.S. states marks a pivotal moment in American politics and international economic policy. At the heart of the lawsuit is Trump's controversial use of executive authority to impose sweeping tariffs during his presidency. Tariffs that many critics argue disrupted the global trade order, harmed domestic businesses, and overstepped constitutional limits. This case, led by states including New York, California, Illinois, and notably some battleground regions like Michigan and Pennsylvania, brings to light long-standing tensions between federal executive power and the rights of individual states. The coalition alleges that Trump's tariff regime, imposed primarily under the guise of national security, caused widespread economic damage, particularly to industries reliant on global supply chains. From a legal standpoint, the core of the state's argument rests on the 1974 Trade Act and its subsequent amendments, which give the president considerable leeway in trade policy but not unlimited power. The lawsuit contends that Trump misused provisions within Section 232, which allows for tariffs to protect national security, by applying them too broadly and without adequate justification. This approach, they argue, effectively bypassed congressional oversight. For many legal scholars, this case echoes earlier constitutional clashes over executive overreach. It raises fundamental questions. How far can a president go in reinterpreting statutes to justify broad economic interventions? Can economic consequences alone trigger a constitutional check? The outcome could redefine the balance of power in American trade governance. Internationally, Trump's tariffs affected a wide range of partners, from the European Union to China, Mexico, and Canada. Retaliatory tariffs ensued, disrupting trade flows and sparking tensions that are still being mended. European leaders, in particular, have expressed interest in the lawsuit's progression, as it could set precedents for future U.S. policy consistency. Global markets responded with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Businesses, especially in the manufacturing and agricultural sectors, reported billions in losses due to lost export markets and rising import costs. The automobile industry, a key employer in several of the suing states, was among the hardest hit. One example comes from Michigan, where auto parts manufacturers saw a steep drop in international orders after tariffs were placed on steel and aluminum. This, in turn, led to layoffs and closures, with ripple effects across local economies. State officials argue that such outcomes contradict Trump's promise to protect American jobs. The lawsuit is also being closely monitored by investors. Legal experts say a victory for the states could embolden future legal action against federal trade policy decisions, potentially introducing new layers of compliance and risk assessment for multinational corporations. Meanwhile, Trump and his legal team have dismissed the lawsuit as politically motivated. They argue that his actions were both legal and necessary to rebalance trade deals that, in their view, were deeply unfair to the United States. Trump himself has framed the lawsuit as an attack not just on his legacy, but on American sovereignty and strength. Political analysts suggest that Trump may leverage the lawsuit to galvanize his base, portraying himself as a disruptor targeted by the political establishment. However, with swing states participating in the suit, the narrative becomes more complex. Public opinion remains divided, especially in regions that suffered economically from the tariff policies. Constitutional experts note that this isn't the first time Section 232 has been used controversially, but Trump's administration pushed its boundaries further than any predecessor. If the courts find that this usage was excessive, it could lead to a narrowing of executive powers in the economic domain, a significant precedent for future administrations. Adding to the case's gravity is the involvement of former officials and economic advisors who have provided depositions detailing internal disagreements during Trump's presidency. Some claim that warnings about the economic fallout of tariff escalation were ignored or downplayed for political optics. At the international level, trade partners may view the lawsuit as a sign of internal American checks and balances functioning effectively. If the suit results in clearer constraints on executive trade powers, it may restore some confidence among allies wary of abrupt U.S. policy shifts. In the agricultural heartlands, soybean and pork farmers, particularly in Midwestern states, suffered heavily from retaliatory tariffs. Many of these farmers had previously supported Trump but later expressed frustration as markets in China and Europe closed off. The lawsuit gives voice to their grievances, turning economic pain into political momentum. Tech companies, too, found themselves ensnared in tariff uncertainty. Firms reliant on Chinese hardware or global logistics chains faced fluctuating costs and uncertain regulations. Some had to reroute production or shift sourcing, leading to increased operational strain and loss of competitiveness. While the legal proceedings are just beginning, experts predict a drawn-out battle that could stretch well into the next election cycle. This timing makes the case especially potent. Its resolution may directly influence voter sentiment and campaign narratives. Beyond electoral implications, the case poses deep institutional questions. Should a president have unilateral authority to remake the economic landscape under the banner of national security? Or must there be a clearer standard, perhaps involving congressional consent, when such sweeping actions are taken? The lawsuit may also prompt legislative efforts to reform Section 232 itself. Some lawmakers have already introduced bills to curtail executive latitude in trade matters, though partisan divides have stalled progress. In the courts, judges will have to weigh not only statutory language but also the practical effects of tariffs. Testimonies from affected business owners, economists, and trade policy veterans will shape how the judiciary interprets the scope of presidential discretion. Ultimately, this case transcends Trump as an individual. It touches on foundational aspects of American governance: how power is divided, how it is exercised, and how it is checked. In a time of polarized politics and global economic volatility, these questions are more urgent than ever. TVAI will continue to monitor this developing story closely. Stay tuned for our next report as we bring expert commentary, legal analysis, and on-the-ground reactions from the states taking on one of the most powerful figures in recent American history. I'm TVAI. Thank you for watching.